gave up a TV job to start a podcast in your basement. If that doesn't scream midlife crisis, I don't know what does.
It was Championship Sunday here in Indianapolis. What's the mindset then coming in as a defending champion?
I want to win. No, I want to win.
The young lady over my shoulder, Caitlin Clark.
Not the best looking guy. And I don't think anyone's going to sit here and say, Matt Randazzo was really good looking.
What has this last month, 2 months, 3 months been like for you? It's an important fan base for the Fighting Illini, is it not?
It is.
He turned 69 years young last week. He looked good, Coach.
Oh, try it. Thank you.
Welcome to Off the Air on a snowy Wednesday here in the Quad Cities. Wednesday, February 12th. Thank you guys so much for joining us, whether you are at home from school because it is snowing out, whether you took work off because of the snow. For the first time this winter, we are finally getting ourselves a good amount of snow. You look out the window here at the Randazzo household, and the snow is a-flying, which means 4 of my boys are running around the house right now, and hopefully I'm going to kick them out soon and have them go sled or shovel or something like that. But while they do all that and I put them to work, we've got a busy show to get to. Thank you guys for joining us. If you're watching us live on YouTube, we appreciate that. Make sure you subscribe, like, comment, all those good things that help us out a little bit. Also, if you know some friends or two that want to listen or take part in the show as well, make sure you let them know about Off the Air with Matt Randazzo. Also, we are up on all of the podcasting platforms, including Apple. That continues to grow by the day, so we appreciate that. So if you don't watch us live, and I don't blame you if you don't want to watch us, because really there's nothing to look at except for myself, and let's be honest, that's not a good thing. So if you want to listen to us on the podcast platform, we appreciate that as well. Of course, hopefully everybody's staying safe out there in the Quad Cities with the snow coming. I think we've had 3 inches of snow this year. Total, I think we're expecting about 8 today. So everyone stay safe out there. I'll continue to make fun of the weather and the weather guys throughout today and the show and all those kind of things, but everyone must stay safe. And I do love James Zahair and company as well. So weather people are good people. I am not missing the newsroom, though, on a day like today. That is one thing for sure. If you missed yesterday's show, please go check it out. We had a ton of fun on yesterday's show as well. John Marks was in the house talking about a lot of Quad City sports and high school sports as well. Also, yesterday on the show, or earlier in the week on the show, Pat Angerer was on the show earlier in the week as well as Julian Vandervelde and several others. So if you're bored today and you want to go check out yesterday's show and Monday's show, we've got a lot of fun stuff going on through the week, so make sure you go check that out as well. Coming up on today's show, a lot to get to. The Fighting Illini back on track. They won their second straight last night. We will check in with our Illini expert, Jim Mattson, sports director down in Peoria, a legend in the state of Illinois, knows a lot about Illini athletics. Jim Mattson in just a matter of moments, so don't you dare go anywhere. Also, yesterday in the world of college basketball, Iowa State continues their winning ways. They've now won 2 straight. They went to Central Florida and got a victory as well. Coming up in hour number 2, Jake Brend from WOI in Des Moines will join us to give a weather report from there and also to talk about the Cyclones. We'll make Jim let us know what's going on down in Peoria as well. So we got your weather covered as well. And then also it is Wednesday, which means the Wildman Dan Burich will be along to talk about any and everything. I think we're going to chat today about the best rivalries in the Quad Cities, his experiences being in a newsroom on a snow day like today, the Super Bowl, and much more. So the one and only Dan Burich will be joining us in a little bit as well. Also, if you want to partake in the show and want to comment and chat along with us, you can do that on YouTube as well. And last but not least, because he's at home and he's been bugging me, my youngest Carson may join the show at the very end of the show. So if you are a fan of goofy little kids that God knows what's going to come out of his mouth, you might want to stick and stay for that one as well. So as we mentioned, a lot to get to on today's show. So thank you so much for joining us on a snowy Wednesday here in the Quad Cities. Well, speaking of the Illini, we're joined now by our own Illini expert and a guy who's dealing with his own Snormageddon or Snowmageddon, however you want to look at it. We're going to talk to Jake Brend in a little bit. He's in Des Moines. We know what's going on in the Quad Cities. Jim, are you surviving the snow down in Peoria?
Yeah, it's slowly starting to trickle in from the West. You guys are sending it our way, but I've got a wife that's a teacher. She went to school and taught. I've got a daughter that's a teacher. She's here somewhere doing some e-learning, and I'm sure the kids are learning a bunch. But most of our schools are canceled today. Most of our high school events are canceled today. We do have a busy night today because Bradley's home at 6 and Illinois State's home at 8. So I'm hoping the snow clears enough that we'll be able to see some of those ball games tonight on the college basketball.
I know that I remember it's almost a 50-50 proposition in what you do, because when you get a lot of snow, it sometimes gives you the night off. Sports is pushed to the back burner and all that kind of stuff. But this type of year or this time of year, you can't take, like, if this happened yesterday on a Tuesday night that's busy or a Friday night, like, my gosh, you're postponing. And then, like, on a Friday night, you got a show to fill. Like, if there's no basketball games, it's hard to fill a show. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. Oh, it's the you never like to tell a producer you don't want all your time, because it sets a bad precedent. So sometimes you make stuff up a little bit to run on a snow day or a rainy day in the spring.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Well, it was a big night last night down in Champaign, and Illinois is slowly starting to get back on track. Before we talk about them on the court, I know it was a special night for the big guy back in town, Kofi Coburn, back getting his jersey recognized. Kind of talk about, what that's like for Illinois fans, and where does he fit in a hierarchy? I'm not saying like best ever or anything like that, but his era, a very successful and special era down in Champaign.
Yeah, I think Kofi, I really think he's one of the more loved Illinois players of all time. I mean, I think you'd put Kenny Battle, you'd put D Brown, you'd put some legendary, but Kofi was just loved. I mean, people wore his jersey, people loved his big smile. He just had a kind of infectious personality that he embraced college. I mean, I remember him and Coleman Hawkins going to football games and cheering like they were in the Illini student section. They loved being Illini. So I think Kofi was really a loved player and such a unique player, such a big, rim rattling slam dunker. And I think Kofi's one of the most loved Illinois players of all time. I mean, I think Illinois fans just embraced him and loved him. And again, he just had that a little bit of that Pied Piper smile. Everybody wants to follow him. And, I know Brad Underwood spoke, I think he said Kofi never had a bad day. And it kind of felt like that. Like Kofi always was upbeat, excited about playing for Illinois, about being an Illini. The famous story with Kofi is Illinois got beat by Florida Atlantic in an embarrassing loss. And right after the game, this high school recruit, this All-American, this 5-star, Kofi Coburn, committed to Illinois. And, along with Ayo, who's going to have his jersey raised, Ayo, who's already had his jersey raised, Terrence Shannon this weekend. But along with Ayo and Kofi kind of turned the program around. They were kind of guys who, after the dark years of John Gross, that they committed early to Brad Underwood and really turned the program around. So they will always be very fondly remembered by Illini fans.
Jim, you mentioned that smile. I think that's what I always remember with, covering some of their Big Ten tournament runs and being around him a few times. Win or lose, he was always gracious and he looked like this big menacing figure on the court. Yeah. But off the court, he was a gentle giant. I know it's cliche, but he always had that smile on his face and always very welcoming as well.
Yeah, just like I said, just a very, very happy kid. I mean, if he weren't 7 foot, he'd fit into the campus anywhere. He's just a really, really a fun-loving kid. And, at the end of the game, they go through the Orange Crush and they give 5. And a lot of the players just going through giving 5. And Kofi was celebrating with the students. He loved being a part of it. And I think it meant a lot to him to be back yesterday. And, when asked what he missed, he said he misses everything. And that's kind of how I think of him. He loved everything. He loved everything at Illinois. He loved the practice and the players and the coaches and the fans, and he loved game day. But I think he just loved being a college athlete, and I think that's something to celebrate too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Left with a lot of victories, a lot of stats, a lot of numbers, but a lot of victories as well. As for today's Illini, or the current Illini, I think we talked last week, and it was when he had 2 tough games to get to on the road, dropped one of them, got one done at Minnesota. That Minnesota game, I felt like it was their get right game. Like there has been some struggles, but I felt like they put a lot of things together against Minnesota. We'll talk about last night in a second, but I want to get your thoughts on Minnesota because it kind of felt like they got back on track to what Illinois wants to be this past weekend up in Minnesota.
Yeah, I mean, Minnesota's the one thing about both these games is Minnesota, very slow tempo team. UCLA, the best defensive team in the Big Ten. And, Illinois scored 83 last night. They scored 95 against Minnesota. So Illinois basically went in both games and kind of dictated tempo and said, we're going to play Illinois basketball, which I like. I think that's what good teams do. I could care less who you're playing. Let's go out and play Illinois basketball. Obviously, Minnesota, they shot a season low 16 three-pointers. They attacked the basket. They got downhill. They got layups. This is still a team that's going to shoot threes. They shot 28 yesterday. But this is a team that needs to get to the rim, get to the basket, and they've done that the last two games. It's been a long time since Illinois has won back-to-back games. It's been a month or so. So it's nice to see Illinois put together two in a row. But I agree with you. Minnesota, you always I always say, in baseball, if the Cubs or Cardinals win a game like 12-2, it's always fun to look at the box score and say, hey, everybody got a hit. Everybody feels good. The last two games for Illinois, you look at the box score, and everybody played pretty well in Minnesota. Everybody played pretty well against UCLA. So everybody, maybe not everybody, but everybody's feeling pretty good about themselves, and that's a little contagious. And yeah, the Minnesota game was a get-right game, not only for the team but for a lot of players.
Last night and Minnesota too, but especially last night as well. KJ looked like KJ again, and I think it's kind of a duh statement, but teams usually are as good as their best player.
Yes.
And he's their best player. Seeing that guy playing that way as we move towards February and get closer to March is a really, really good sign for Brad Underwood and company.
Yeah, Brad Underwood loves to say, that's what an NBA player looks like. And KJ went through a funk there where he didn't look like an NBA lottery pick. Last night, Minnesota, he looked like an NBA lottery pick. And you're right, when you're led by an NBA lottery pick, when that guy's playing like one of the best players in the country, you're going to be a much better team. And KJ, I keep saying, I think KJ and Ivisic are kind of tied at the hip. I think he missed his buddy. I think Ivisic stretches the court. They play that pick and roll. They just have an understanding. So I think when both of them are out there, it helps KJ. And obviously, Ivisic had played very, very well in both games, too. And I think he went 6 for 8 on threes. So he stretched the court, which gave KJ a lot of freedom.
That place was hopping, especially early on. They got off to a good start. They led by, I think, as many as 16 or whatever it was. It got a little funky down the end. But just to kind of talk about the game in general, because when you have a place like that, and it's going to be that way, and we're going to talk about this weekend here in a second, but it's going to be that way a lot here in February when they get some big games back at home. To take advantage of a place like that early on in the game is important, and they did that last night.
Yeah, they jumped out to a big lead. It was the Orange Crush, the student section of Illinois, has been getting a lot of criticism about not being as into the game, not being as, for lack of a better word, vicious, not being on the opponents as much. Well, yesterday, Sky Clark got a lot of abuse. But the Orange Crush was into the game, and you're right. Part of that, I think, was they just played well early, and the crowd got fired up, and the crowd got excited. I think the good start ignited the crowd. Sometimes the Illini might need the crowd to ignite the Illini, and Tom Izzo coming to town on Saturday is certainly going to fire up the Illini crowd too. But boy, they were on Sky Clark last night, and he probably had a lot of it coming after quitting mid-season. You just don't see that in college basketball. But part of me did feel a little sorry for the kid. I mean, the crowd was really on Clark.
Yeah, and I was going to ask you that because I'm all about a good student section getting after people.
Yes.
So I was legitimately torn by it. You heard it. You looked on social media. I like stuff like that. And then to a point where and then I started reading some backstories of what all happened.
Yeah.
So I don't know, just your thoughts on those kind of things, because I think things that are facts are one thing. I don't know enough about the Sky Clark situation to know exactly what was going on. But you know what? College kids are going to be college kids, and that's part of what I think we're going to sound old again, but I think that's what it used to be like, where your student section, I can remember the days of of the keys being jangled when Deion Thomas came to Iowa City. I go back as far as that.
Right.
And God knows what they yelled at Pierre Pierce down at Illinois and all that kind of stuff. So I'm okay with it's just your thoughts on it in general, because I love good spirited student sections, but I genuinely found myself like going back and forth in my head last night about like what's good, what's bad, all that kind of stuff.
Well, I do think the rules have changed. I used to always say you should never boo a single player and boo the coach, but yeah, I never felt you should boo a college kid who's out there playing. Now they're getting NIL money. It's a little different. Sky Clark got NIL money to come to Illinois, left the team. Probably didn't live up to his end of the bargain. So, last year, obviously, we had Terrence Shannon Jr. with the fans chanting, just say no. And, at what point is it, downright mean? And at what point is it just, like you said, friendly fun or, jabbing at a guy? It's a fine line. You're right. It always has been a fine line. It was a fine line when I was in school. It was a fine line when Deion Thomas was in school. So, I don't know. I do think that you kind of want a crowd to be intimidating. I remember I walked out of a high school girls basketball game, and I thought I won't mention the school, but I thought the one school was a little harsh on the other team. And as I walked out, the mother and the father were talking, and the mother said, "Boy, that other team's crowd was mean." And the father said, "Yeah, I wish our crowd was like that." I think there is that kind of, boy, I wish our crowd could intimidate him too. I wish our crowd was into the game like that. So I think there is kind of a fine line of, what's mean and what's a home court advantage.
Yeah, and you want that. I mean, you want especially those students. Hey, I'll tell you right now, there's Iowa fans that look at Carver Hawkeye, and there's no students there to chant anything, or there's very few students there to chant anything. So you don't want to tell kids, hey, come out, make this place rowdy, and then go, wait a minute, like that's too much. So, you mentioned the Terrence Shannon stuff last year. You wish you could go back to those student sections and say like, hey, now that the things played out, you kind of owe us an apology or whatever. So, but anyways, that's the best part of college basketball. Will Riley was okay last night. He wasn't what he has been, but man, that's somebody. And it's funny. I go back to one of our conversations and I said to you, maybe that's that guy that's a building block for next year. And you're like, and that's when it first popped in my head. Well, yeah, he's on a fast track to get someplace bigger. Jim, he's looked like a lottery pick. Maybe not so much last night, but those last 3-4 games, he's been pretty special.
Yeah, he really is starting to understand when he can beat a man, when he can beat the guy off the dribble. When he hits his threes like he did the other day, he's really special. But he can, the scoring, the burners he gets down where he starts scoring are crazy unique for Illinois. And to be able to bring him off the bench, and, everything now for Illinois has kind of slotted where they're kind of going big with Tommy at 7 foot, with Merez, a 6'9" rebounder, with Ben, a 6'9" number 3. So Ben's a 3. So when Riley comes in, Riley is a 3 who's sometimes being guarded by 6'3", 6'4" guys. Well, they can't handle Riley. Riley's 6'7", and if he sees a little guy on him, he'll get very comfortable in a hurry. So Illinois right now, I worry about teams with quick wings, a little bit like Michigan State. Yeah, can Illinois guard them? But Illinois is a very hard guard when Humrickhouse is 6'9", and a lot of college's third biggest guy is like 6'4", 6'5". That's a problem. Same thing with Riley. When Riley comes in, if there's a 6'3" guy guarding him, he'll take him to the hoop all day. And he's very patient. I think early in the year he was hurried and trying so hard to impress. Now I think he knows what he can do, and boy, can he score. I mean, his again, last night he had 10, but 10 points off the bench is pretty good. We're starting to expect 20 out of him off the bench, which is unheard of, but he's done it 3 times this year. He can really score, and if you can get that kind of production off the bench, the two guys who have really, in the last maybe 3-4 games, have improved is Humrickhouse and Riley, and they've given Illinois a real kind of X factor who, are maybe the secret potion of them making a run.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And the thing is with that is expectations. Once again, when Will Riley started that season with the first game of 36 or whatever it was, now the expectations are going to go back up. And a guy that with all the guys that are on that roster, the way he's been playing and the way he's going to continue to play, he continues to rise up that scouting report. You all of a sudden not like the guy coming off the bench. Now you're 1, 2, or 3 when it comes to game planning against and all that kind of stuff. Boy, when Tommy hurt his ankle against, was it Rutgers? I was like, oh boy, here we go. Yeah. And he gutted it out, played great against Minnesota. I know he's not practicing a ton, but him being out there is so important. How is his ankle? Is it something he's going to have to deal with for the rest of the season, or hopefully it gets better as time goes?
Yeah, Underwood says it's still as big as a grapefruit, but you really don't see it. You see him moving pretty well. He's actually played some pretty good interior defense for Illinois the last 2 games. I'm sure he's very limited at practice. They're trying to make sure all his minutes are used at the game, but what a difference he makes. And, it was hard to think last night about Kofi, the classic low post center, and Tommy outside shooting threes, passing the ball. I grew up with Kofi, but the modern big man is Tommy, and Tommy's really given this team a lift. And I think in the picture of what Illinois basketball wanted to be, Tomislav may be as important as KJ, because he really, again, moves the pieces and creates a lot of mismatches on that offense. And having him back and having him healthy, knock on wood, is really important for Illinois, because, again, I think KJ plays better with Tommy, but I think Tommy makes all 5 guys better. And, hopefully the ankle injury gets better and better. And, you start looking ahead, obviously Michigan State, you got the game at Wisconsin, you got the big Duke showdown coming up here quicker than you think. So it's going to be a fun stretch here. And Illinois is starting to get healthy and really playing efficient and, high-scoring basketball. Like I said, Minnesota 95 points. Minnesota doesn't give up 95. 83 against UCLA. UCLA doesn't give up 83. Illinois' offense is playing at a very high level again.
Yeah, no, they looked really, really good. And let's talk about what's next, because there's no love lost with Sparty, especially the first game and the way that went down. Boy, you look from the outside looking in, a Saturday night game with those guys coming to town, with a student section maybe able to prepare themselves even more than they would be for a game like that all day on a Saturday. I think it's a great spot for the Illini. It's one of those spots that I look at as somebody who likes to dabble in sports gambling, and I'm curious what that line's going to be, because I really like Illinois. It's a really good opportunity for Illinois to win a 3rd straight game, especially when you're getting some big games down the road, and you got to take advantage of home when you can. A big game at home on Sunday.
Yeah, home games and home quad 1 games, are kind of rare. Last night was a quad 1 win for Illinois. Right now, we'll see how it plays out. Saturday against Michigan State right now is a quad 1 win. You have an opportunity to get another quad 1 win at home. But obviously, Tom Izzo, Michigan State, I'm kind of a believer that Michigan State is still considered the program in the country in the Big Ten. There's still the one that plays in the Champions Classic. And I know a lot of Illini fans, a lot of certainly Purdue fans think, hey, what about us? We're kind of but Tom Izzo is the face of the Big Ten. There's no doubt about that. Tom is emotional. The crowd's going to be all over him. The last game when, KJ barely got to play with all the foul trouble, I think is a thorn in Illinois' side. So, and you're right, Saturday night, you just don't see it very often where you have a Saturday night huge Big Ten rival. The schedule makers got this one right, and it's going to be electric down there on Saturday for Illinois and Michigan State. And I think I said to you a couple of weeks ago, I don't know if anybody in the Big Ten is great. Purdue loses last night. Michigan State's lost a few in a row now. The Big Ten tournament's going to be wild, but Illinois, when they're on their A game, still might be as good as anyone in the Big Ten, and we'll see. But Saturday's a really nice measuring stick. And, the one thing is, Illinois blew a 10-point lead to Northwestern. Illinois blew a big lead to Washington, had to, score late to win. Illinois was up 16 last night. Suddenly it's a 2-point game. You're biting your nails again. The one thing they've got to finish these games. They got to learn to do that a little bit. But Michigan State's going to be a lot of fun on Saturday.
Jim Mattson joining us right now. A few more for you before I let you get out and shovel your driveway or whatever you have to do next.
It's coming.
Sparty is coming off a loss. I'm a big proponent of not wanting a team coming off a loss, especially a home disappointing loss with a a Hall of Fame head coach coming to my place. Is that a little bit of concern? I think when you look at big factors like the home court advantage, I think is going to be huge. The timing of the game, I think, is important, all that kind of stuff. A lot of advantages, maybe Illinois. I think maybe disadvantage is that you got a guy coming in that's a really good head coach that just let one slip away against a not very good Indiana team at home. He's gonna have those guys' attention as they get ready for Saturday night.
Oh, there's no doubt about that. I expect Michigan State to play well, but I really do think Illinois feels like the Michigan State game was kind of stolen from them by a little bit by the officiating. And when KJ was on the floor for whatever it was, 8 minutes, Illinois was really hard for Michigan State to contain. So I think I understand your question. I understand Michigan State's got a lot of motivation, but I really think this is one Illinois had circled on their calendar. It's nice to have a Tuesday game. They'll probably take today off. They'll have 3 days to get ready. Illinois is going to play well. I'll be very, very disappointed if Illinois doesn't play well. I expect Michigan State to play well, but I think Illinois is a very tough team for Michigan State to guard too with their size. So I understand. I'm kind of with you. I don't want a mad Tom Izzo coming to town either, but I think Illinois is mad too. So I think Illinois has got plenty of motivation after what happened up there in East Lansing.
Is this one of those games as a sports director that is technically supposed to get like weekends off, but we know that we don't get weekends off? Is this one where, and I don't know, are we to wrestling state yet? I don't think we are yet, but is this a game that Jim Mattson kind of jumps on and says, fine guys, I'll work and get down to Champaign?
Yeah, I can't wait to get down there on Saturday. When I look at the schedule of Saturday and Sunday, it used to be every game was Saturday at 1 or every game was, Sunday at 1. Now with the Big Ten schedule, you don't know, Big Ten TV and the Peacock and everything, you don't know what times are. But Illinois' got a few weekend games, and this is one that I've had circled for a long time. I really, UCLA, hadn't been to Champaign since 1964. That's special. But Michigan State, Indiana, Wisconsin are the teams, Iowa. I love going to those games. I love to see those teams roll into Champaign. And, Tom Izzo's been coaching for a long time. I don't know how much more we're going to see the 30-year Big Ten coach. So it's always special when Izzo comes into your building.
No, that's a good call. 2 more for you before I let you go. 6 losses in Big Ten play. I feel like, and obviously some of the leaders are coming back down to earth. I think Purdue's still 11-2. So a Big Ten championship's probably not there for Illinois. But as important as anything else, just not having to play, getting that double bye. I don't even know how it is now, weird, because not everybody makes the tournament. But still, getting one of those top 4 is important. Illinois is not there yet, but I think can get there. How important is the stretch? I know maybe that ultimate goal of a Big Ten regular season championship isn't there anymore, but they still got a ton to play for as they prepare for the postseason.
Oh, absolutely. I think Illinois right now has 7 quad 1 wins, which I think is top 5 in the country. I think Auburn's at 11 or some ridiculous number. But, Illinois' got a lot of quad 1 wins. So improving their resume is probably far more the goal now than chasing down the Big Ten title. If somebody comes back and Illinois catches up, we'll talk about a Big Ten championship. But for now, it's probably trying to get a top 4 seed, trying to get maybe some geographical preference in the tournament. But, a big difference between being like a 4 seed and a 7 seed. In round 2, you're playing a 2 or you're playing a 5. There's a big difference trying to get to a 3 or 4 or 5 seed for Illinois. So, right now their net ranking is very, very high. And, their net ranking is trending more towards a 3 seed. Their record, like you said, with 6 Big Ten losses, looks more like a 6 seed. So can they prove that they are one of the top 3 or 4 seeds in the country is, I think, probably their biggest goal in the next month.
We're not going to give this young lady enough time on this week's show, but Shauna Green is 9-4 in the Big Ten. If she's not one of the front runners for Coach of the Year, I don't know who's voting. They continue to win basketball games, and she continues to do a great job.
Yeah, I think she is the Big Ten Coach of the Year. Illinois had so many injuries, and I kind of, like I said, I went into this year with high expectations. But when the injuries happened, I started saying, well, next year she's got a huge recruiting class coming in. Wait till next year. Shauna's not that way. She's embraced this team. She's embraced they're really a hustle, grinded out team. They got some really good players, but they're probably not as talented as we all expected them to be with the injuries. And you're right, they're finding a way time after time, and it's fun to see. It's fun. Again, we've been talking since you went on the air, Matt, but Bielema's recruiting at a remarkably high level. The women's basketball team is playing at a 20-year high. the men's basketball team is, selling out games and, not in the top 25 this week, but looking like a contender for the NCAA tournament to make a run. So it's a good time to be orange and blue, I'll tell you.
Yeah, it is, and it's always a good time to talk to my good friend Jim Mattson. Enjoy your snowy Wednesday. Don't make news let you go out there into the snow and do any reporting. Stay dry, stay safe, and we'll talk to you maybe Monday after an interesting Saturday night in Champaign. Enjoy it down there, and as always, thank you, my friend.
Thanks, Matt. Great talking to you.
All right, he is Jim Mattson, sports legend is what I like to call him down in the Peoria area. You're watching Off the Air on a snowy Wednesday. Coming up, it is Wednesday, which means we go from one legend to another legend, from Jim Mattson to my mentor, Dan Burich, and Wildman Wednesdays. Plenty to talk to Dan about. He's next, right here on OTA.
Hello, Dan Pearson here of FCA. Our team is thrilled to support Off the Air with our good friend Matt Randazzo. We share the view of the power of sport when it comes to relationships, including the influence of the coach. FCA believes the coach is the most influential person in America. Matt celebrates local coaches and athletes. His content is informational, insightful, and inspirational. Our Fellowship of Christian Athlete team loves partnering with Off the Air with Matt Randazzo while we engage, equip, and empower coaches and athletes in our 23 counties. FCA, the heart and soul in sports.
View from the West, the podcast covering Illinois high school football.
It's going to be a hard-hitting game. It's going to be great football.
Weekly analysis and reaction from around the western side of the state of Illinois.
This is the game we had circled when the year started.
Follow along on YouTube and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.
It's big-time football out there tonight, and I know we can play big-time football.
View from the West. We got you covered.
Are you looking for the Quad City's best chips and salsa? There's only one dude to turn to.
Right on.
Snoop. Hand-cut chips, fried fresh with that crunch you've come to love. And the most addicting salsa with delicious fresh ingredients each and every time. Pick up your chips and salsa, queso, enchiladas, and much more at the Stern Center in Rock Island. To place your order, simply call the man himself. It's Snoop at 309-314-8197 and find out for yourself what the rest of the Quad Cities already loves. Welcome back to Off the Air on a snowy Wednesday here in the Quad Cities. It is snowing here. Of course, that's a huge storm that everybody's really worried about. It is not snowing in North Carolina, where we find our good friend Dan Burich for Wildman Wednesday. Dan, it's Armageddon up here. We're going to get like 5 inches of snow. I'm worried.
Which is interesting because what weather has done, or TV weather for that matter, the triple super duper Doppler radars in every market, they try to predict stuff and it half doesn't hit. Here in North Carolina, when I first moved here, and it's been 15 years, I think now, we got hit with like 1 or 2 snow days a year, and it was great because they shut everything down. So it was good, fun snow days. Then we went about 3 years without getting it. We got hit recently. Right now, even here, I was driving home from work about 3 hours ago. It was 36 degrees. And they said it was going to get down to 34, and it was like freezing rain. And they're panicking as well. Yeah, you know the joke I used to tease James Sahara about. I feel sorry for the weatherman's wife because every time they predict 12 inches, they only get like 4 or 5. Go ahead. No. The whole weather thing, and that was one of the reasons that I had no problem leaving TV, and you probably didn't either. It became so much weather, panic. And then if you were wrong and you missed it, the weatherman was congratulated on air like they were God. We missed it. Terms like mixed bag of weather, basically you don't know what you're saying. Ooh, we could get a mixed bag of weather, maybe a little snow, maybe a little sleet and rain, or it could sunshine could come out later. So you basically told me nothing, which could happen every day. My joke was it was 50-50, right? It's either going to rain or it isn't. It's either going to snow or it isn't. Why do you spend that much time? And what you hated, and I hated, and I know you hated it too, first look of weather, okay? But you didn't give me the forecast. You just told me what was going on in Pennsylvania or something. And we'll come back in 2 minutes to give you weather. And then we'll cut into sports again because weather ran long. And instead of getting 4 minutes of sports, you're down to like 3.5, but we're going to cut it to 2.5 because we have to take one last look at weather. So we had weather in the top open, which is okay. Weather is important. A guy like my dad used to watch weather and go to bed. He wanted to get the forecast in the winter. So do it in the first block. But then they come back and do that whole segment, and then they have to do one last look at weather because it changed so much from 10:08 to 10:15 to now 10:35.
Yeah.
So I always thought it was ridiculous.
It's amazing, Dan, and I want to preference all of this by you mentioned James Zahara. Love James Zahara. This is nothing personal against those guys at all. Although, did you ever tease like the inches joke? Just James, not Neil, not anybody else, just James.
I follow him. I got along with Neil fine. I got along with James fine. Great guy. Mr. Peepers was there whenever
Peoples.
Anthony Peoples. I'm trying to think who some of the other weather guys, but I had no problem with that.
Yeah.
Well, James were pretty much there the whole time I was
David Paul.
Cameraman like you on the floor crew. We kind of had the same path. I had no problem with any of them. Yeah. They're not. It's not their fault.
No. God bless them.
Yeah, they get handed everything. And they weren't bad guys. And on the other stations I worked at, for the most part, weather guys were okay. It's just ridiculous. It's one of the only things that's truly local that can affect you locally. So everything's, local news. So, you can't do it on a national level. So I can see some of it. But like I said, I totally understood weather being in the first segment. And then they have their own segment, and then one last look of weather was always kind of ridiculous because it's the only thing. You didn't do headlines at the newscast. You didn't go, okay, one last look at quick headlines, what we ran over in the first segment if you missed it. But they did it with weather. You were going to ask me, and I'll just cut to the chase because you said some ridiculous moments. I remember some of the big snowstorms. I would just stop editing. I would stop working because I'm like, they're not going to have any sports. Mm-hmm. And some of the other people are like, oh, you better be prepared. And I'm like, nah, doesn't matter. And if I had to go on it like I'm doing now, if I had to go on and just ad lib, and they'd be like, oh, you got to get 2 minutes of sports, no problem. Just open up the mic and I'll tell you off the top of my head what's going on. I had no problem doing that. I don't know if you did that, Matt, but I would literally just stop working. Going, I got one preview, for some game coming up, like there's a Thunder preview or a Mallards preview. I got a soundbite. I got one Vosat. I can do a headline segment of 30 seconds, hitting the headlines and get out of there. It was no problem because I looked at it as a snow day for me.
Yeah. No.
And I remember them. Go ahead.
No, like you mentioned, it was like the same thing with obviously election days or snow days for us as well. Although I always get a kick out of those because those were like, it was like pizza and everything else in the newsroom. And my running joke, which is really old that everybody does, is what does the sports department call election day? Every Friday night during football and basketball season, because that's what we do. We run around and get election results and scores and put them all in, but we just have like a fraction of the staff to do it instead of the entire building doing it. But no, I was the same way. I would say, hey, this ain't happening. I'm going to go home. I'm 15 minutes from here. If for some reason at 5:40 you decide that you actually need me, give me a buzz, let me know, and I'll make sure I get back over here because there's no reason to waste your time. No, and the thing that's nowadays, Dan, I don't know if they do it in North Carolina. And again, I love the people, the weather guys, they're all good people, but it's the corporate people that do it, Dan. It's not the actual weather people themselves. It's, what it is about. It's now we have a alert impact day or whatever it is. I'm trying to put all of them together because each station has their own thing.
Think about the word impact. When I started in journalism, 40 years ago, whatever it was, it was effect. The weather's going to have an effect on you, which is grammatically is correct. Somebody has an impact when a car runs into a wall, but they changed it from effect. Nobody uses effect anymore. It's impact because it's more impactful. That was a consultant thing. I remember when they started doing that 20 years ago. Oh, use impact. I'm like, but it really doesn't have an impact. It just may have an effect. Oh, no, don't use that word. So just the terminology changed. We were talking about before we got on, I got told one time I was coming back with Mike Mudd covering a Mallard's Colonial Cup or whatever it was called back then, United Hockey League, Colonial Hockey League, Colonial Cup, I think was still the name. And we were coming back from Muskegon or Flint. It was back-to-back years. And it was really bad weather. And I remember that Mudd's like, let's do call-ins. You know, how the photons would get into it, like Jose and Andy. All right, so I was doing the call-ins, and I remember going, this is the worst. And it's changing as I'm going because I'm like, this is the worst I've ever seen it driving down 80. And, you know, I've been driving, and I said something like 15, 20 years, and then I realized, hell, I was driving that course the whole time I was at Ambrose. So that's another, you know. And I said, next time, I said, yeah, like I said, it's been 25 years I've been driving this, whatever and the first, you know, I come into the building and Mertens is the first guy. Well, is it 15 years or 20 years? And I'm like, dude, we did one call in, and then we did another one in an hour, and my thought process changed. But that one I remember doing, which it was okay because we were actually on the road. The other one is one time, and I think it was Griff Potter was the news director, and I have nothing against any. When I name CJ or Griff Potter or Don North, they're just people. They were the news director. It's a fact. And I think it was Griff who up. It might have been CJ, but I think it was Griff who came up and said, "Hey, you got to get out front. We need somebody to do a cut in." And I'm like, I said, I'm not even dressed. I think I was, I don't even know if I was anchoring sports that day. I may be helping. So I hop out there and they throw it to me and the rain's coming across and I made a joke. I said, yeah, Neil, you're in the studio and I'm out front like an idiot in the rain telling people it's raining to get inside. How stupid is this? They never asked me again. Never once. Other again. And I came back in kind of smiling and, got told I had a bad attitude or whatever it was. And I thought it was stupid. You put me outside. We were telling people to stay inside. Neil's telling people to stay inside. And you threw it outside to me in the front of the station, which was so stupid too.
Yeah.
A whole 25 feet away. Yeah. So I always thought it was kind of silly. And I think some of the weather guys did as well.
No, I think so too. And I won't dominate this with all weather, but it is funny because now they have, I gotta be careful, the roving cars that they'll take live shots from the car and they'll be like, hey, don't go out on the roads.
There's a camera on the reporter.
Yep.
Yeah.
And they'll be like, don't go on the roads, but they're out on the roads doing the thing. I feel like my old man because like he used to say this when my kids are all home today. It's no big deal. It's a snow day. And it was because we're forecasted 5 inches of snow. And I feel like that old man that's like in my day, but it really was back that was nothing. We would just go to school and you'd take a little extra time and things haven't gotten worse. The snow removal's gotten better. Cars have gotten better. I'm old, Dan, which doesn't say much for you because if I'm old, no, but so it's just funny.
Remember, and I know it was bad in the Quad Cities too, but the one in the Chicago area, and specifically in Joliet, was 78 and 79, like back-to-back years. I want to say 78, but it was really bad where schools actually shut down for a couple of days. And I remember my brother and I just grabbed snow shovels and helped. And sometimes we got batches of cookies. Sometimes people give us money, but we just walked in the neighborhood and we're shoveling people out and pushing cars out. And my dad plowed for the grade school he worked at, St. Mary's Nativity, so he had a plow, but he just used it for the school. And it was funny. And ironically, I don't know if it's ironically, but my dad had strokes later on, but there was a guy up the street who had a stroke. And his wife would be out there shoveling. My dad would plow he wouldn't even plow our driveway. He would plow theirs, and then he'd go to work. And, people would be flipping him off because you do his driveway. And so it was crazy. My brother had a plow. So we actually, me and my one brother were shoveling, and so we actually made some money during the snow day. But I remember it was like literally only one car could get down the street. And it was, I think we had like 9 inches one day and 12 the next, or 12 and 9, but it was a total over 20.
Yeah.
And it was,
walking
down that was the only time I remember the school shut down for 2 days, and that was it.
No.
And that was it, because you're like some inches of snow, back-to-back days, almost got a foot one day and almost a foot the next day.
That's a good week for some people, but last year I think we had the same thing where we had about 21 inches of snow and I get that and it's great, but yeah, my kids are they want to have a snow day. They want to go outside and do the hills and all that kind of stuff. I'm like, that driveway needs to be completely cleaned off, then you guys can do whatever you want to do. But get my driveway cleaned off and all that good stuff before we get rolling to that. Before we go any further, you are representing the Bees today. I love to see it. I'd love to see it.
Always, I'm going to do a quad. I got to bring out the fitted clothes, and I bought this back when I was back in the Bix week, and my wife likes the Bix. She ran it, and my kids ran it, and Jada tells you she ran it, Jack ran it. I of course didn't. I've done it enough time. But yeah, I took the kids and showed them St. Ambrose. I think you weren't there that day.
You guys always come back when I go on vacation. We always have a family vacation when you guys come back.
I took them to 97X. I took them to Channel A. It was funny. And I showed them Ambrose. And I was like, come on, I'll buy you a shirt. And they're like, nah, we're good.
So you got yourself one. Yeah. So Dan, this week I talked with our mutual good friend, John Marks, yesterday, and a referee brought it up to me, like the best rivalries in the Quad Cities when it comes to high school. And Johnny, he's a politician. He literally named every 2 school you could put together and say that was the biggest rivalry because he's a politician. He would make everybody happy. I'm curious what yours might be, because to put it in perspective, you just mentioned you've been in North Carolina for 15 years. And I'm curious, rivalries don't change a lot, but I think they can be tweaked a little bit over the years when it comes to competitiveness and all that kind of stuff. So when it comes to you, when I say to you, what are those top rivalries that maybe you miss covering in the Quad City area, high school wise? What are the first ones that pop into your head?
Well, on each side, Moline, Rock Island on the Illinois side, and it may have changed a little bit, but Bettendorf, Assumption on the Iowa side, because there was a disdain. Like Bettendorf PV's a natural rivalry, and it is a rivalry, and it's very good. But there's a little more like mutual respect. They're our neighbors. There's an anti, as you know, as a Catholic, all of my guy, me, a jelly Catholic. There's an Assumption can recruit, and Assumption's like, you want to talk about recruiting? Bettendorf's recruiting kids from north and west, and both schools were right? Because I saw it happen. When I got to Ambrose, so 82, I guess was my freshman year, or 83. No, 82. And fall of 82. And I know it was, people would still talk about Central and West, because Central, the one state with, they didn't win with Roger, but they were awesome. They were in the title game or playoffs. Curtis won. And then even afterwards, when I was in Ambrose, they won, not with Booker, Scott, and Cotton, but Couch afterwards, but they were always ranked. And I'm trying to think of Mike Burke, if they won with that year. And Bettendorf had won, I think, the same year we won. So the kids I play with, Mark Walker and L.T. Dean, I think L.T. Dean and Stout got second. And then Walker and that group, the Karras and stuff, they had won. And Randy Washington, McCarras was a junior. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So I played, so I'd hear all the talk in the locker room about, there was a little West Central, but it was starting to become Bettendorf. And Bettendorf and Assumption really didn't like each other. And I'll tell you something that was funny, because Bettendorf won that year. So it would have been the 81 fall. The only loss was to Assumption. Assumption won in basketball. And then wrestling, it was really good when I started covering it. They were both really good. And remember, they were in different classes, not in football, but in basketball. In wrestling, they'd be in different classes. So there were years, I want to say, where they both won state or were competing at state. Like, Assumption might have won 3A and Bettendorf 4A wrestling. So I always saw that was competitive. And there was really kind of a dislike. I don't want to say hatred, but definitely a dislike that we talked about a couple weeks ago. Bettendorf, Assumption was the second best team in the state, maybe. Iowa City West was good, but they couldn't get over the Bettendorf hump. So I enjoyed that rivalry, and I maybe going to Ambrose and playing with a lot of Assumption guys and playing with a lot of Bettendorf guys had something to do with it. Now, like I said, PV was a natural rivalry. North Scott's gotten really good now, so that's a rivalry. West, everybody still blames when North opened that West and Central fell off a little bit. So to me, on the Iowa side, was definitely a Bettendorf.
Let me hop in.
On football.
Let me hop in for a second because you're right. So now Assumption and Bettendorf don't play in football anymore ever. Yeah. And I feel like that messes with the rivalry a little bit, because that's such a big sport. And on top of that, and I think it was happening before you left, but Pleasant Valley's been so good. And now it's almost to the point where I think the girls' sports won 5 state championships alone last year. So maybe that's the one that's evolved a little bit because of the fact that I think football's such a big sport that the fact that they don't play each other kind of tweaks it a little bit. But I remember the rivalry that you definitely were talking about.
Well, think about in colleges like Oklahoma not playing Texas or something like that. If that happened, when they switch conference. Yeah, but they're in the same conference. But I mean, just okay, Oklahoma, Nebraska used to be one of the best games when I was a kid, and they don't play anymore. It does happen when you take away the football rivalry. And I will say that Pleasant Valley was in this. Bettendorf was a fun rivalry, and I remember Pleasant Valley winning the state in basketball. Was in there, going to the state playoffs in football when Anthony and I can't remember who the quarterback was, but they had some good teams. So I'm saying I remember that was a rivalry, but you're just asking specifically me on that side. I assumption Bettendorf back then, and it's that's just it. I've been gone 15 years. Let's just say that. On the Illinois side, it's obviously Moline Rock Island, one of the longest rivalries. I think it's listed as the second longest rivalry in the state. You've got your 2 biggest towns. It was then. Historically, aside from Davenport, they were the towns. 1 high school, no offense to you Wildman guys, but 1 public high school, 1. Now UT, I used to kind of feel bad. It's like PV and Bettendorf. You had the UT Moline, a little rivalry. Alleman, which hurt you guys a little bit smaller, and also you didn't have a home football field.
Yep. And
now you think the Rocky Moline rivalry, if you want to go to the game at Wharton or Rocky Fieldhouse, you can probably go because they're huge and great venues. The Rock Island Bowl, right? Rocky Bowl, whatever they call it. Not that Soul Bowl's a bad, UT's got a nice setup. UT reminds me like PV, they're like the 3rd one out. But just Moline, with specifically basketball. And then Moline was really good in wrestling. Rocky always had a couple of good wrestlers. UT was better at wrestling. Softball. And I know Alleman was competitive, and it was weird because it was just 4, nothing against Galesburg, Quincy and stuff, but a Western Big Six, it was the 4 Quad City high schools.
Yeah.
So UT and Alleman were knocking at the door, but just historically, the Moline Rock Island. Give you an example. My wife's working at, when she first moved from Florida, grew up in Oklahoma, born in Florida, grew up in Oklahoma, moves and she's working at, you remember the old Charlie's Pizza, right? You remember that, right?
Yep.
Yeah. She's working there, and one of the girls says, oh, you like her? Well, she doesn't like me because I went to Rocky and she's a Moline girl. And Kelly's like, okay, I don't know what that means. What is it? Jets and Sharks, West Side Story? And I'm trying to explain to her, and she goes, I have no idea what this is talking about. But that's just 2 girls who went to school. So there was some dislike. We won't say hatred on either side. So to me, and it could have changed, like right now, it'd be maybe heated. I know Bam and Rosie made the wrestling thing a little bit, exciting for a while. And it's funny, Bam's son is a basketball player, which I find kind of funny.
And good.
But overall, Moline Rock Island and Assumption Bettendorf, just for me.
Let me throw a few different rivalries out. You're nailing it, but there's some small school rivalries. Rockridge Sherrard stands out. DeWitt Maquoketa.
Rockridge Alito for a while too.
Yeah, 1,000%. Wilton Durant is one out there that's always really good because they're so close together. I don't know who the rival would be. I do remember that Dan Burich was huge in Kewanee with the Geese. I remember the Geese loved some Dan Burich. I can't think of who their natural rivalry would be, but what are some of the smaller ones?
Not just Kewanee, but specifically Wethersfield.
Yes.
When they won state. But that goes back to, just being honest, since people watch this. I went when I was at Ambrose, and there were 2 freshmen when I was a senior. And one of them coached an area, Andy Bullock. A lot of them know him. And Gus was the other guy. And they were freshmen, and they'd come in like any other freshman wearing their high school gear. And they got flying geese on. So I just love because I'm a senior, or maybe a junior. I was older than them, for at least 2 years older. I think it's senior though. And I tease them about the flying geese. They'd walk in. So then when I start doing the sports on 97X KJOC, whatever, I'd go to my boys, the flying geese. Same thing with the Wilton Beavers, of course. And I had a lot of friends from Durant, so I had fun with that. A lot of my stuff was like inside jokes, tongue in cheek. My boys, the flying geese, and I'd show a shot of Bullock when he was coaching at Galv or something. The other ones were Morrison and Fulton. Had a lot of fun with those schools up in that. I'm trying to think down Monmouth. Like I always tease the people. And, so it was always fun covering those Rova And, I'd quiz Klein stuff on air. I'd feed him. I'd say, you got to answer the question. He'd still mess it up. I go, it's Rio, Oneida, Watauga. I'd give him what does Roma stand for? Viola. And he'd still butcher it. I probably did it with Jesse. I'm trying to think some of the other. So it was always a lot more fun. Riverdale was another one because I knew a lot of kids. The late, great Bob Jervis was Byron, but so were Johnny Lamb, Greg Mistak, and Rod Morrison, and Sorensen, and Barry Plum. So we had LaDon Lively. I played with like 6 or 7 guys from over the 4 years at Ambrose.
Wow.
So I had a lot of fun there. And, it's like the Tug Fest type crowd. So it was always fun, too, to go to the little towns because, it wasn't as big a crowd. Going out to Rockridge, how we both talk about Glenn Cook. And Amy was coaching. Fun guy to have fun with. And the elders who coached at various schools, like he was at Sherrard. The guy at Aledo, I can't remember. I'm drawing a blank on his name.
Cully Walter.
Great guy. Going up to Sterling Newman. That was a fun, I'd rather go up and do a Newman game sometimes than a Sterling game. And that was another rivalry, like with some people. So it was more fun. And I think Sherrard Rockridge is one of them that can compete. Not Durant Bennett, Durant Polkafest, Wilton. I guess that's one. Tipton, that area, I'm trying to think. I thought was as much, but I think of the small ones because it's so close to right outside Rock Island. The Rockridge Sherrard one would probably be up there, and I guess Fulton Morrison maybe. I'm trying to, it's just like that was the conference.
What did Fulton and Morrison play for? Do you remember? In football, Fulton and Morrison played for the
ship or something, wooden duck or something like that.
Wooden shoe.
Wooden shoe.
There you go. You're right there. You're right there.
Comes out, so I'm glad it wasn't that one. Wooden shoe, yeah.
There you go.
But that's
Yeah. Did you watch? Okay, so first and foremost, I think full credit to you. Because you picked the Eagles, and I think you did it a little wider margin, didn't you?
I said they were going to be double digits.
Yeah.
I thought they'd pull away. I said, they'd win, but it'd be not as close as they said because Kansas City make a comeback. I didn't say 24-0. It's funny because I put it on Facebook. I could have friends, Dan Brown, Jay Kellenberger, if you guys still in the Quad Cities, where we text each other. I said Cooper DeJohn's going to be involved in one of the turnovers, either fumble or interception. That Mahomes is going to have a fumble or interception or both, like 2 turnovers. That the Eagles are going to win by double digits and it won't be that close. That they got the number 1 defense, the number 1 running game. The only one I was really wrong on, I said Barkley would go over 100 yards. No, he had receiving yards. And I'm going to stand up as a guy who likes running the ball and defense. Just him, they go, oh, Barkley, Saquon, only 3 yards, only 4 yards. Oh, just a couple of 4 yards. You know what that adds up to? First down.
Yeah.
6 yards. And that's why and he caught a couple passes. So it wasn't like they shut him down. Go back to when the Bears won an 85 season, 86 Super Bowl. Peyton was getting hit by 3 people. McMahon ran in 2 touchdowns. Suey ran a nice 20-yard touchdown move because they were all concentrated on Walter. And Barkley had a better game than Walter, actually, statistically. So it's not like he almost scored a touchdown on reception. So the only one I was wrong on is I thought Barkley was going to break the 100 yards. Spagnano, not giving up. Kansas City hasn't given up 100 yards rushing to a running back. And I thought it was going to. I went back to the old days. John Riggins, Marcus Allen, where the running backs were just rolling in the playoffs. Emmitt Smith and went, end up in the Super Bowl with 150. So I was kind of having a flashback. But other than that, I think I got 4 out of the 5 or 5 out of the 6 predictions. Of course, my bets on DraftKings are only $1 and I win 20 or 17. So it's not like I won a lot. If I really had the guts to put down 100, then I'd be talking about a couple thousand. But I put down dollar bets.
Yeah, you got to do more, Dan. I'm impressed. I can be your bookie. That's impressive. You know what? The cool part thing is you watch what Philly. What'd you say?
I've won $29. Woo! Put down $1. Oh yes, I'm rich.
I won $450, which was pretty decent. Well, 450, yeah.
Very good.
Yeah, during the game. A lot of live stuff during the game. I got some buddies that are pretty good at doing what they do, so I kind of tailed them a little bit. So yeah, it was, hey, when you're technically unemployed, Dan, like any income that you can help your wife with is a good thing. So it worked out pretty decent. The cool thing, I think that you
I'm going 2 minutes.
What's that?
Because Gabe Baptiste, he said, and the land of the free, or excuse me,
he said it again.
Home, he said it 3 times.
Yeah,
repeated himself, and it took 2 minutes, I think.
Yeah. No, it's crazy how right on the money they are. Hey, did I tell you last week that my wife bets on the coin toss? Did I tell you about that?
Did she lose again?
It's amazing, Dan. Heads, and it was tails. She lost again. And and here's the best part is because I talked about it on the show with you and with several other people, I had buddies that wanted to know. So I put it on social media when she decided, because she doesn't rush it. It's usually like 2 or 3 in the afternoon. And bless her heart, she's so confident. She's like, she texted me. She went and got some pizza. The kids were sick and we just went and grabbed some pizza. And she texted me, "It will be heads. Thank you." And she was like, and then she walked in. Yeah. My buddies are sending me text messages. I had at least 8 buddies win $100 or more by going the opposite of what Jen did and picked tails and won money. It's amazing. Life, what is it? Death, taxes, and my wife messing up and losing the coin toss. But as I say, she may have cost me $50 on Sunday. In the long run, I'm doing okay. She's getting me more than that.
To make her feel happy, remember on K-Jack on Fridays, I would just do picks on whatever the big events were. And on Kentucky Derby, 3 years in a row, unbeknownst to me, but one of the listeners, and we looked it up and I laughed, 3 years in a row, I took the horse, and usually I would take it on a name, like if it was Dapper Dan or Running Wild, so I didn't really pay attention. It was more fun. And I got last place 3 years in a row. And we looked it up, and that's harder to do than pick the winner 3 years in a row. So
absolutely.
Tell that one. Yeah.
I will tell her that. I think it'll make her feel better. The game itself, real fast, it's fun to watch. And you're old school, a team that dominates defensively, especially up front, doesn't blitz anything fancy, just 4 guys winning up front, and then a running game that, while it didn't get over 100 yards and all that kind of stuff, it was effective in doing what they want to do. It's amazing. We kind of talked. It's a copycat league.
Jalen had 72 yards rushing, which is the most by any quarterback in Super Bowl history, so it was effective. And it's a quarterback sneak. They won with a non-prima donna quarterback, a guy who got benched by Saban, which I love, and then he laughs because he throws the same type of pass to Smith that he got benched at Tua threw to. So somewhere in the back, Jalen's going, maybe I could have made that pass if you would left me in the game, and Alabama would have won. So he goes to Oklahoma. He doesn't win the Heisman like Baker and Kyler do, but he's done. Baker Mayfield hasn't done. Kyler Murray hasn't done. Tua hasn't done. He's been in the Super Bowl, which none of them have done, and he's won it. Yeah. So I'm a big Jalen Hurts fan. And like the tush push work, because he squats 600. How much do you think the linemen like him? He's in there squatting in that. I'm going to say 600, maybe more. I mean, it's ridiculous no matter. Quarterback in there squatting that much, and you can tell it's legit strength because he bowls over on the quarterback sneak. They have to love him. And he's not a prima donna. These other guys, Mahomes has what? 50, 60 million a year. The Burrows who complain, they don't protect me. Jalen doesn't say boo. Yeah. Doesn't care. So I like the fact that a non-prima donna quarterback won it, that he runs. So Philadelphia, you're right. They didn't blitz. They don't have to. We're just going to beat you with our 4 guys up front. This big guy Carter and the other guy, the Georgia guys basically. And that's how the Giants, sent LT as a rusher, and the Bears had Will Marshall, but it was those, it was the Leonard Marshall with the Giants and Hampton and down with the Bears. Those guys up front, McMichael, just beating you for, the great defenses. And I just named 2 of them, even go back to Baltimore when Tony Siragusa and I'm drawing blanks on some names, but those big guys up front, they have good linebackers. But if those 4 can beat you up front, you got it made. Yeah. And historically, even some of the Steel Curtain. Mean Joe Green, L.C. Green. Reggie White had as much to do with Green Bay ever winning than Brett Favre did. Bruce Smith had Buffalo in 4 Super Bowls in a row more than Jim Kelly did. In fact, Kelly didn't even bring him back in a playoff game. It was Frank Wright. So if you got a stud up front, when the Rams finally won, nothing against your boy Stafford going over there, but it was Donald up the middle. Mm-hmm. So up the middle, those stud guys, and I'm not talking the guy from Dallas who runs around and tries to get sacks. I'm talking about a guy who comes straight up the middle. Yeah. Those are the teams that win. And any football coach, any high school football coach is on the show or listening and hears this, they're going to agree with it. That's, college coach, whatever. That's what you just love is those 4 guys up front, moving the line, getting after it. The other side of the coin is when they were on the goal line, you knew what was coming. And, there goes Philly, right, pushing you back. In fact, the best defensive lineman, best defensive player, probably on Kansas City, remember hurt his neck. They showed him on the sidelines, and they were working. He had a pinch, like not a pinch nerve where it is a pinch nerve, but stinger, and they touched his neck, and he just limp. Right, that was from trying to take on. And Jones is a Hall of Fame lineman, and he couldn't handle it. Another thing we're going to talk about the Super Bowl, and I did predict that. I said Cooper was going to get a turnover. Here's something I want to point out. Cooper, they're showing all his basketball highlights. Same thing with Tim Dwight. Steve Nash, when he came down from Canada, and I'm going to touch on it. You may not want me to, but there's a reverse racism. Like if a white guy grows up in Chicago, I go back to Allstott. Illinois wanted to move him to tight end or linebacker. He's like, no, I want to play running back. They're like, maybe fullback. If he doesn't go to Purdue where they let him play running back, next thing you know, he's in the NFL and he's dominant. There is you can't have a white guy at cornerback. You can't have a white guy return punts. In the South even, or in the big cities like Chicago or up in Michigan. But in Iowa, when your state is predominantly white kids, sure. You want to return punts, Cooper? Sure. Yeah. Eugene, you want to play, you can play basketball and go in and dunk. There isn't that limiting, no, you got to be the stereotypical white non-athletic guy. And think about all the Europeans who come in the NBA. If I always say this, if Dirk Nowitzki played in Batavia, Illinois, like Jack Sikma did, they would have had him in the post, little jump hooks. But he's over in Germany. He's like, I'm going to let it fly. Yeah. Think about all the European. If Jokic played at Quincy, he would have never left the paint. I'll just throw out names we know, right? Yeah. But he comes up to Serbia. Yeah, bring up the ball if you want. Get at the top of the key. And it's the same thing in football. If you look at the Josh Allen, even, if he's playing in LA or San Francisco, they might put him at you need to play some other position, or you can't run the ball. You're too big. We're going to put you at linebacker. But because he goes to a small Cowboy school and ends up going to a small, same thing in college, he's one of the most athletic quarterbacks, if not the most athletic in the NFL. So it's funny how there's a different thing, and I think Cooper falls in that mode. If he grew up in Chicago, they might not have let him play corner. Oh, you're strong safety, son. Strong safety. Linebacker.
I'll send it to you when we're done. Have you seen there's a video on social media about Cooper Jean is a quarterback number 1. It's to a song. I can't remember. Basically it's I'll send it to you. But Dan, yes.
Jackson, you youngster.
Yep. Yes,
Cooper.
There you go. So I just didn't want to sing. I don't need to hear myself. I can repeat and I can hear myself sing, and it's not a good thing. Look at his resume, what he did at Iowa, what his numbers were at the combine and everything else. Everything checked every box that would be a top 15, top 10 pick, and he went 40th.
Right.
Why?
Well, I said the same thing. There is, and I don't want to stir up race or anything, but there's like a reverse, he can't be that athletic. He's a white guy.
No, I get it.
Seriously, he can't be.
Hey.
He's fast for a while. And it's not the brothers who play either. They love him. It's almost the old white guys in the front office.
Yes. No.
They're knocking you see. Yeah.
You're exactly right. Hey, couple more things before I let you go. I got 2 things. One, did you I don't even want to ask you about this halftime show, because it's just, when people would ask me about it, I self-admittedly, I don't know anything about the performer. It may have been great to a huge group of people, and that's totally cool. It just wasn't my cup of tea, and that's fine. I don't want to bash it. It just wasn't my thing. What do you got to say?
The fact that the term "my cup of tea" means you're old. I didn't watch. I'm a football fan, and this is what I said to my wife. I watch football 17 weeks in a row. Well, no, 20-some count the playoffs, right? I watched 3 playoff games in a row the opening weekend, Saturday and Sunday. I think it's the greatest week, and I watch every game. I sit there, albeit not my best workout physical activity day, but I'll watch 3 games in a row. Now all of a sudden, my wife and daughter are in the room. They haven't watched the full game all season. They're watching a half-light show with another guest of ours. I went to the bathroom, got something to eat. And when they're talking about him, I'm with you. I don't know who he is. And I don't pretend to know who he is, and I don't really care. And the thing, when my wife loved Lady Gaga, and, some lady at work was bringing up Prince, Purple Rain, and it was raining. Somebody went back to Michael Jackson, like the first big Pepsi show, halftime show. You could throw out Coldplay and Rihanna when she was pregnant. I'm trying to think, some lady at work today, because we were all talking about this, she said, I think Bruno Mars did the best. Okay. I haven't really watched any of them as a football fan, and it's the longest halftime, college football halftime, even longer. What do you go do? I'd let the dogs out. Like I said, go check, see, do I need beer? I got more food. I'm back in my locker room. Yeah. So as a football fan like you, and most people probably watching your cast here, I don't really care. I've never liked the halftime show. I remember Prince playing. Like, I remember there was a whole thing on it. You saw it before the game about how Michael Jackson waited 2 minutes and the director was panicking. I don't remember that. I remember him performing at halftime. I think Lady Gaga dove in, and my wife likes Lady Gaga. And I remember thinking, it was kind of cool. Katy Perry was another one. Trying to think. Who were some of the other ones we're forgetting? Remember there was a Total Rap one when it was like Snoop Dogg.
Yeah, I loved that one. I watched that one. I loved that one. It was amazing.
Okay. Because it was just, and Eminem was out there, because they all did the one song you knew.
Yep.
So that was, and I'm not a huge rap person. Don't pretend to be. I remember Springsteen. I love Springsteen, but he did Glory Days, which is a baseball song. And it was kind of, I'm like, okay, Bruce, whatever. Did Aerosmith do one? It's hard to even remember because they're so short. They do one. I remember Coldplay was okay because they're just like kind of top 40 and they did a couple songs. The Katy Perry one, I remember they were making fun of a dancer the next day who was off. Like, they had people behind her. I remember the big thing. People were like, I think Rihanna was pregnant. I'm like, really? You have to think about it? It was so obvious. Like, I always remember there's something coming out of it. I guess Samuel L. Jackson dressed up as Uncle Sam. Who cares? I mean, I have no problem with it. I don't love it. I don't hate it. I just, as a true football fan, and it's just like the same thing, people bitching about the commercials. Bud versus Bud Light Bud Bowl, that was how many years ago? 30, 40 years ago? Mm-hmm. And that was kind of fun. In the 80s, they started all that stuff. I laughed at the Dunkin' Donut ones. I laughed more that Belichick had his young girlfriend in him, but there were a couple other ones. The Seal one was really weird. But I mean, that's the stuff that more, like I was saying at work today, ladies are talking about it, clients, therapists, everybody. Most people are, my buddy Moon, Kendrick Lamar. I thought that was the skinny basketball player who dated the fat Kardashian.
That's really good. No, that's really good.
It's a funny line. That tells you how old I am and how irrelevant. He didn't know who he was either.
Yeah. No, my big thing is it's not
out of way.
There's no reason for me to critique anything because I don't know what I'm critiquing because I don't know what's going on. So before I let you go, you did a lot of. What's that?
I said we're not the target audience because we watch every football game every weekend. Yep. They're not targeting fantasy guys or the diehard Lions fan, the diehard Bears fan, the guy who's watched. I don't remember Namath. I remember what's the first? I remember the Dolphins. So I've been watching how many Super Bowls?
Yeah.
Over.
For me, it was the Super Bowl Shuffle. That's the first big Super Bowl that I remember is a Super Bowl Shuffle. What was it, 85? So I was 6 years old. That's the first one. I've been watching them ever since. I'm going to watch them next year, whether it's whoever's halftime, I'm going to watch regardless. Okay, so I'm assuming in your radio days or TV days or something that you made an on-air wager with someone to have some fun. So Pat Anger and I, he thinks he can beat me in basketball, and he's just a fat banker that he's a football player and a wrestler. And I feel like I can, and not in basketball, we're just going to play horse. So we have this thing going. Long story short, he, during my dad's golf outing, we put a basketball hoop on one of the tee boxes, and we're playing and drinking. And we started playing pig one time. Everybody backed up. I think we both had a pee, and we jumped in the carts and kept moving, and he claims to have won. So anyways, long story short, we're going to play horse at PepsiCo next week, and we got to figure out what the losers do, or who loses, who wins. And we're trying to come up with ideas. Right now, we're kind of narrowing in on me shaving my head if I lose, which scares me because I have enormous ears. Dan, if you haven't forgotten, they haven't gotten any smaller. No. And they might not come back. It might not come back. That's my worry. And then for him, we're thinking about him standing at the corner of Brady and 53rd with a sign for an hour that says, I lost to Matt Randazzo in basketball. I don't know exactly where we go. Do you have any ideas of what the loser can do?
My first thought is he has to wear like Iowa State or Illinois, Minnesota, whoever he thought the biggest rivalry was at Iowa.
Yeah.
And he has to like sing songs of, the Cyclones song or the Golden Gophers or some rivalry. Because in the NFL, the Colts, I know he played, but the rivalries to me are still more intense in college. So that was where I first went. You can't lose to him in horror. If it was one-on-one and, he started hacking you, I could give you a little leeway going. He's a former NFL linebacker. Hell, I could see that. But it's kind of like Caitlin Clark versus Cooper when Cooper said he could beat her and Caitlin was like, sure, he could beat me one-on-one. And then Cooper's like, we're not talking horse.
Yes.
So you are Caitlin Clark.
Yes.
You have to beat him.
That's the first time I've ever been compared to her.
Yeah, I wouldn't shave my head if I were you, I'll tell you that. Maybe I would think of something else.
I can't.
I would think.
Here's my problem, Dan, is it's going to happen one way or the other, and I'm not going to tell you, and you're going to pop on here probably next Wednesday or the Wednesday after, and I'm going to look like just a bald idiot, and you're going to sit there and laugh your ass off because but I think I'm like pigeonholed enough social media wise that they're really pressuring me to do and when you're starting a daily show, right, there's no better publicity than being an idiot.
Example, when I started with Dwyer Michaels, when I came back, and Guy Perry and they put me on with Bill and Greg. I was there a couple of months, and I kept saying the NFC is going to beat the AFC, and it was the first year the Giants beat the Bills. Norwood missed the kick, and I kept saying I don't care who's quarterbacking the Giants, because Hostetler said the NFC's tougher. They're just going to run the ball, and Otis Anderson had 140 yards or something. And I basically called. I said, it's going to be close, but Buffalo's not, tight game. NFC will win. And I remember we're at the old Lee's in Moline, Super Bowl party. And Roger, our GM at the time, walks up and goes, I'm a Cleveland Browns fan. I don't care who wins, but I'm rooting for the Giants. Just some wild man will be right on the next day on air. And, it was funny because, Bills were the explosive team with Andre Reed and Thurman Thomas, and the Giants were going in with the backup quarterback. So it's funny, when you're making your name, you're trying to establish something. That kind of established me, with people hey, he's kind of loud and obnoxious, but he kind of knows his football. And even look at now, I'm taking credit for the Eagles. And I do a pretty good job of predicting football. Now, don't give me basketball, maybe, baseball, no way. And any other sports, but I can still hang football. So it is funny how you got to do stuff, and that you brought that up when you said you're trying to establish yourself. I'm like, I kind of, that's funny.
Yeah,
that was the first one I remember was this.
Hey,
first bold prediction on.
Yeah, I'm trying to get people to watch this goofy little show that I'm doing from 10 to noon, and there's no better way than a beloved Iowa Hawkeye guy shaving my head live on YouTube. Like, that'll help subscriptions. Now, I mentioned that to Pat, and Pat's like, well, that's bullshit because you're going to throw it or you're going to use that as an excuse when I actually beat you. So, which I may have to do. Nobody will know.
Yeah, I use that for anytime we lose a charity game. I'm like, we were supposed to lose.
Yeah,
I missed that 3 on 3.
Exactly.
I wanted the people happy in Wilton, you know.
In Galva. We always played in Galva. I remember playing a softball game in Galva where the only thing I can remember was we played in Galva and Hamill showed up in jeans. That's the only thing I remember. I don't know why. And you made fun of him, believe it or not.
Because 97X, we actually did that a lot. We did a little at Channel 8. Like at Channel 8, thought they did it. And 97X, me and Guy Perry, and Dwyer would go. Bill went once in a while, but Dwyer would go and entertain the crowd and stuff. And we played a lot. We had fun. And I remember we played in Comanche a lot, it seemed like. We played in like the Fultons and Morrisons and Monmouths. You know, you would play a game at like Palmer or something, and nobody'd be there. Yeah. It'd be like 5 feet. But you'd go to small towns, Kewanee and stuff, and play. And that's the running joke was, and I think it was Guy Perry who started it, because I would say stuff like, I'm huge in Kewanee. And then he would just add to it and announce me when I did afternoon sports. Dan's huge in Kewanee. Dan's huge in Monmouth. Biggest Morrison. And we just started joking. And because I would, I'd go out to Durant Polka Fest. I'd go out to Tug Fest. And I'd hop on both sides. I'd tug with the Iowa, the Great Plains team, and I'd go to Illinois and give them crap. And they're like, you're from Illinois. But the funny thing is, well, you're doing it right now. You're going to realize just outworking people is half the deal. And I remember just having fun going out to these towns, and a lot of the other media people, a lot of the other TV, radio, they would go do remotes and sit in the corner, and I'm, chugging beers, buying beers, and like, but also doing the Tug Fest, running the race, going out to the Moonlight Chase and Eldridge, run the race, and then stay out there and people. I'm trying to think of some of the other. Well, the Firecracker Up, I ran it. I never ran the 10K. Sign up for it and cut and do the 5K. Yeah. But the Bix too. You do the Bixes at 6. I do the K-Jack show, hop out and run the big at 6 with people, and then go out and play softball. So a lot of it was just doing all those crazy charity games and having fun with them and fundraisers. And it was a blast. And Alan Snell posted a picture on Facebook today, an old Channel 8 picture, and it was Andy McKay's in it, and Paul Magnuson Mag, Robin Davis down in Kansas City now, Terry Brooks. And I joked, I said, here's the box score. Robin had 30. He was a great player at UT and University of Duke. Terry had 5, great athlete, obviously at Rock Island, Illinois. And I'm like, McKay hit a 3, Greg Vanderbilt hit 2, Paul Magnuson fouled out, no points. and they typed back in Savali's like, and Burich fouled out and got kicked out of the game. And I'm like, and I was probably drinking beer at the city tap. It was like,
and people remember it. That's the beauty part about it. People probably remembered it as well. Hey, just before I let you go, you'll get a kick out of this. McKay still plays basketball every single Sunday. I go to PepsiCo and play basketball with them. We got guys in their 70s, 60s, and now my 15-year-olds playing with us too. So we literally have somebody from every decade playing, and it's a bunch of fun, and it's a good way to keep in shape and all that good stuff. McKay can go. Hoops McKay, he's not too shabby. So, hey, Dan, I appreciate this. Next week, I hope to see you with a full head of hair. I'm not going to let you know what happens. You'll just be surprised one way or the other. So I appreciate you. We'll talk to you next week.
Watch your verbiage. You won't see me with a full head of hair. Hopefully you still have.
No, I don't. So, all right, Dan, I appreciate you. We'll see you next week. Bye. All right. That is Dan Burich. Always fun on a Wednesday, especially a snowy Wednesday here in the Quad Cities, to catch up with the Wildman. The beauty part is, I think when I proposed this to Dan, I said, 15 minutes a week, come on and chat a little sports. And yeah, we don't do 15. There's no such thing as 15 minutes. So we got a lot more to get to right here on Off the Air on a Wednesday.
View from the West. the podcast covering Illinois high school football.
It's going to be a hard-hitting game. It's going to be great football.
Weekly analysis and reaction from around the western side of the state of Illinois.
This is the game we had circled when the year started.
Follow along on YouTube and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.
It's big-time football out there tonight, and I know we can play big-time football.
You from the West. We got you covered.
Are you looking for the Quad City's best chips and salsa? There's only one dude to turn to.
Right on.
Snoop. Hand-cut chips, fried fresh with that crunch you've come to love. And the most addicting salsa with delicious fresh ingredients each and every time. Pick up your chips and salsa, queso, enchiladas, and much more at the Stern Center in Rock Island. To place your order, simply call the man himself. It's Snoop at 309-314-8197 and find out for yourself what the rest of the Quad Cities already loves. Welcome back to Off the Air on a Wednesday here in the Quad Cities, a snowy Wednesday here in the Quad Cities. Earlier in the show, we talked to Jim Mattson down in Peoria, and they're preparing for the snow. And now we're going to go the other direction. We'll go west and join our good friend Jake Brend in Des Moines. And you're already enjoying the snow. It's already there for you in Des Moines.
Yeah, it looks foreign. We already have more snow on the ground right now than I think we've had all winter combined. So it honestly, usually I'd complain about snow, but it does feel kind of nice to finally have some on the ground.
Yeah. No, and I'm that big guy that and snow can be annoying, but if you're going to snow, just snow and make it a day where people got to stay inside and you have an excuse not to do anything. I know you're not working tonight, so you don't have to go deal with the roads and all that kind of stuff. Just hunker down, watch college basketball tonight, NBA tonight, and enjoy the evening, right?
Yeah, I'm going to make up a steak, maybe binge some TV shows, watch some college basketball. It feels like a snow day for me. It feels like I'm a little kid again. I love it. There
you go. I love it as well. It is a snow day here, and if you hear any yelling and screaming, it's because I have 4 boys that are being unattended to right now as I pretend to do a TV show up in my loft. So hopefully they behave themselves. Well, speaking of behaving themselves, bad segue, but Iowa State back to behaving themselves on the basketball court. Obviously, a tough 3-game stretch where they played really good teams and lost some nothing embarrassing about losing any of those games, but now back on track. And they continued that last night, beating a Central Florida team that might not jump out at you, but it's a quality victory on the road in probably the best conference in basketball. It was a good night for the Cyclones, was it not?
Yeah, it was just an all-around solid win by Iowa State. They had 8 players play, and all but one scored 8+ points. It was probably the most balanced game that I've seen Iowa State play all year offensively. They even got some help from the bench with Nate Heisey and Brant Chatfield. And UCF isn't a team that's not a win that Cyclone fans will be looking back on YouTube highlights a few years down the road, but they're a borderline bubble team at this point. They've now lost 5 in a row, so I would doubt they make the tournament. But it's still a win against a team that went on the road and beat Texas Tech, a team that took Houston to the wire at home. So anytime that you can get a quad 1 road win, especially during this stretch of basketball where Iowa State kind of needs to go 4-0 before Houston, you'll take it.
And Jake, think about this, and Iowa State fans can think about this. Iowa State coming to town is a big deal nowadays. I mean, they're that team. So every fan base, every school is going to lick their chops at the fact that one of college basketball's best teams are coming into their arena. They're going to take everybody's best shot. And I think it was businesslike. It was workmanlike. They went down there and you won a game by double figures against a team in a building that they wanted to make their mark. You talked about them being a bubble team. Boy, a victory last night would have gone a long way for Central Florida. And now here's Iowa State back on track and continuing to roll in the right direction.
Yeah, Iowa State's been ranked in the top 10, 22 straight weeks. That's the longest in the country. So anytime like you said, that Iowa State rolls into town, there's a little number by their name. And for a team like UCF, for a team like K-State a couple weeks ago, we'll see it again this week with Cincinnati coming to Ames. Anytime those teams can pick up a win against one of those marquee programs in college basketball, that does so much for NCAA tournament resumes. And I think we probably saw a bit of a learning curve with that the last month of the season, going to West Virginia, going to Arizona State, going to Arizona. It's a different spot where Iowa State is the hunted, where a team like Kansas, they've been dealing with that Bill Self's entire tenure. So I think Iowa State's kind of learning on the fly, but last night might have been the best that they've handled it from a tip-off to final buzzer. It was just like you said, it was a very workmanlike win. Nothing too flashy, but they're just the better team and proved it. Jake,
they're healthy now, and health and sports go a long way. But that one guy is pretty special. The guy that gets healthy makes them, in my opinion, a Final Four team. What does he do on the floor that makes everyone else around him better and just gives Iowa State that extra bonus that they need, especially in a conference like the Big 12?
Yeah, there's not many 6'8" big men that shoot 45% from three. And that requires a person on him, whereas when he was out, you really only had one good to elite three-point shooter in Curtis Jones. So what you saw teams doing were they were just crashing in the paint, and that was taking away driving lanes for Keyshawn Gilbert. It was making it a lot more difficult for the bigs to post up, which is where Iowa State is really at their best, is in the paint. And it was forcing guys like Tamin Lipsey, Keyshawn Gilbert, Nate Heisey to shoot more threes than they probably should be. So to get Milan back, it spaces the floor, and it opens up driving lanes for Gilbert. It clears the paint out for the big guys, and that's not even to mention that you bring back a 6'8" guy that shoots 45% from three and can go for 20 really night in, night out. And last night he only went for 3, but you still saw the impact of having him on the floor and what that does for everybody else.
Doesn't he give this team another guy that can be the best player on the floor on any given night? I think that's what's special about Iowa State, is they got so many guys that it might not be this guy, it might not be that guy, but it's going to be somebody that's going to get you. And now they just have another person, another player that you can look up and be like, wow, he went for 25 and won this game for Iowa State.
Yeah, I don't know when I started this or why I started this last winter / spring, but I want to say it was when Iowa State, they didn't go on a losing streak at the end of the year, but they had a game where they scored like 50 points against Oklahoma and won, and they barely squeaked by a bad West Virginia team at home, and they were just playing bad offensive basketball, and Milan had his worst stretch of his freshman year. And when he played well in the Big 12 tournament, every game I just started tweeting, Milan Momcilovic is the difference between a Sweet 16 and a Final Four. And I still think that's true to this day, because if he's going out there and hitting a couple shots, yeah, they're a good team. But when he has those nights where he's scoring 20 or 25 points, I don't know if there's a team in the country that can beat Iowa State. And one of those games last year, they beat Houston in the Big 12 championship by 30, and that was the number one team in the country. And he had his career best game. So Milan adds a completely different gear, and they can win games when he plays fine. But when he's on, they are really, really, really hard to guard.
They now come home, Iowa State and Ames, for the next two very, very winnable games. Just kind of talk about the mindset of that team, because you look at it and you can be a fan and look and go, okay, Cincinnati and Colorado, Iowa State should have an easy week, or a relatively easy week. There's no such thing as an easy week in the Big 12, but relatively speaking. I don't think TJ allows his team to think that way. What is the mindset of this team as they have a week? I mean, we just talked to Jim Mattson earlier in the show. It's Illinois, Michigan State this weekend. Boy, everybody's going to be talking next weekend about Iowa State and Houston down in Houston. What do you do not to look ahead with that game coming up here in, 9 days, 10 days, whatever it is?
Well, Cincinnati is not a great team, but they are playing better. They've won 3 straight, and that was a team that was expected to make the NCAA tournament this year. They were actually in the top 25 in the non-conference. They just haven't gelled for whatever reason. So that is definitely not a game that you can sleepwalk through and win at Hilton Coliseum. The Iowa State will have to be ready to go Saturday. I think they probably will be. It'll be another good Saturday afternoon crowd. Colorado, on the other hand, that's the definition of a trap game. They haven't won a game in Big 12 play. Iowa State's already beat them twice, once in Maui, once in Boulder. And on the other side of that game is a game at Houston, which will be probably the biggest game of the regular season for Iowa State. So, I mean, I know the coaching staff. I know TJ Otzelberger will be harping to his guys ahead of that Colorado game. You can't overlook this game. It's just as important. The coaches can only say so much. I don't know what it's like to be in the league for that, but I would imagine it'll be somewhat hard to not look past Colorado and get to Houston. But again, I'm not the one in the basketball shoes and the jersey, which is good because I'm already looking ahead to Houston.
Yeah, we get the fun job of not having to do that, but. Jake, you look at this schedule, and this is before conference tournament, March Madness, all this kind of stuff. You still have Houston that you get ready for. Arizona comes to the Hilton. That's going to be a fun game. Kansas State, a trip there, but obviously there's going to be some retribution on the line or some revenge on the line when it comes to that game. There's still some fun quality games for Iowa State fans to look forward to, even before you start talking conference tournament, NCAA tournament, Sweet 16, Final Four, whatever. It's going to be a fun 4 weeks for Iowa State basketball, regardless of what happens in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, and it's a really critical 4 weeks because Iowa State is playing for seeding right now. Unless a team like Houston, Arizona, Texas Tech, unless those teams suffer a couple upsets along the road, the Big 12 regular season championship is probably out of reach by my estimation. But they're still playing for a 2 seed and maybe even a 1. So you can, if you want to be a lock for a 2 seed, you can probably only afford 1 more loss. And you'd most likely want that to be at Houston. So there is plenty to play for. Arizona at home, at K-State, they're playing like one of the 5 or 10 best teams in the country right now. That's how you close the regular season. BYU gave the Cyclones all sorts of problems last year. So it is definitely a critical final month down the stretch for Iowa State.
Jake, a couple more things before I let you go. I like to invest. I call it invest in sports gambling. And when Iowa State went through a law, you could look and see and get them for a Final Four team. And I believe I got them at plus 400. Maybe towards the end of that, maybe they had bounced back and won a game before then. But anyways, that's good value for a team that when you see fully healthy, this is still a Final Four team. Now, you mentioned seeding will be important. Matchups will be important. We don't know what the brackets are. But I guess my question is, did I make a good investment? But 2, this is still a Final Four team if everything lines up correctly, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I was checking out the markets too, and it shows that Vegas kind of echoes what I thought. And when Iowa State went on that 3-game skid, and when they lost 4 of 7 without Momcilovic, their odds didn't change at all, which was very telling. And I think that bet that you could place today is just as good as a month ago. I think when Iowa State was ranked number 2 in the country and had only lost 1 game and it was on a tip into Auburn, I still think Iowa State's that same team. They might not be a 1 seed like it was expected at that time, but I still don't see any reason why Iowa State shouldn't be playing in the Elite Eight with 1 game against an elite opponent to get to San Antonio for the first time since 1944. That's how long it's been. But to answer your question, yeah, I think it's a solid investment at this point.
Are you saying I should triple down and like my kids don't need to go to college? Like, I mean, I got 4 of them. Do I need to have all of them go to college? Let's not get carried away. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say college is pretty expensive, so I.
No, you're right.
I'll
you're
hold
right.
the financial advice for someone wiser than me.
There you go. 2 more before I let you go. Iowa State's running back coach. I think it's running back coach, assistant, head coach. So I can't. You can help me maybe. Rumored, and I think is going to the beloved Detroit Lions. So this is more of a personal question. I don't know if you know him personally, but I've heard really good things about him. Well-respected coach is what I've heard.
Yeah, well-respected, and it just goes to show, I think, overall the respect that Matt Campbell's staff has throughout the NFL. It's the second straight year where they've lost an assistant to the NFL, assuming this happens. Nate Shithouse went to the Rams last year and then was a finalist for the Buccaneers offensive coordinator job. I think it's getting to the point now where Campbell is so respected, and obviously there's some Iowa State guys on the Lions already, and it sounds like a home run hire. I'm not in the locker room day to day, but I know what people say about Coach Roll, and really everyone that's come along on that offensive staff since the disappointing 2022 season has turned around the offense to have 2 really good seasons. And it's not a surprise to see another guy get an opportunity to make the jump to the NFL.
Jake, all I heard you say was the Lions are going to win the Super Bowl. That's all I got out of that question or that answer. So that's what I'm taking from it.
They better. This year was worst case. I said they better. This year was worst case scenario for me. It was either the evil Chiefs or the Eagles.
No, yuck.
I
hear you.
Disaster either way.
Well, I watched that game on Sunday thinking like, what if? So I'm ready for next season to be here already. But I don't want to do that yet because we got a good finish in college basketball, and we appreciate you joining us like you do. He's our Illini expert, and he's the most powerful sportscaster in the entire state of Iowa. He is Jake Brend. Enjoy your steak. It really frustrates me. I'm going to go downstairs and make some macaroni and cheese probably for my kid, and you're going to sit there and eat steak. But enjoy it. Enjoy your day off, and we'll talk to you real soon.
All right, thanks, Dazzo.
All right, he is Jake Brend, down over at WI in Des Moines, talking Iowa State athletics. Well, we're just getting warmed up. We got more to get to here on a snowy Wednesday here in the Quad Cities. You're watching OTA. We'll be right back. Are you looking for the Quad Cities' best chips and salsa? There's only one dude to turn to.
Right on.
Snoop. Hand-cut chips, fried fresh with that crunch you've come to love. And the most addicting salsa with delicious fresh ingredients each and every time. Pick up your chips and salsa, queso, enchiladas, and much more at the Stern Center in Rock Island. To place your order, simply call the man himself. It's Snoop at 309-314-8197 and find out for yourself what the rest of the Quad Cities already loves. Welcome back to OTA on a Wednesday here in the Quad Cities. A snowy Wednesday in which my oldest, I believe my 2 oldest sons are outside shoveling, which is a good thing. And that means I'm dealing with the youngest. And the youngest is Carson Randazzo, the guy who stars in the Snoop's Chips and Salsa commercial, is joining us live on the set. I can't believe it. Me neither. Hold on, Daddy almost didn't get a microphone on you. Say hi to see if that works.
Hello?
Oh, yeah, you're good to go.
Fine.
So you're supposed to be in school?
No.
Yeah, you're supposed to be. It is 11:45. You should be where? What would you be doing at 11:45 if you're at school?
I'd be at recess, getting inside right now.
Okay, so why aren't you?
The snow.
Yeah, the snow. So, you have been good. You've been a good. Now, tell me about that chips and salsa commercial, because we're not going to talk to you very long, because I don't know if anybody cares. Do you think people care about what you have to say?
Well, yeah.
Yeah, I figured they probably do too. The chips and salsa commercial. Was that the first time you ever had Snoops?
No.
You don't like Snoops at all, do you?
I love Snoops.
You love Snoops?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Every time we go there, you try to get more and more chips and salsa.
Well, yeah.
I know.
True.
I know it. So, what's on the agenda this afternoon? What are we going to do this afternoon that's a snow day? What kind of things can we do?
I'm going to play football in the snow.
You're playing football in the snow?
Mm-hmm.
What about sledding?
We're going to do that too.
Okay, who's we?
All of the brothers.
Oh, okay. So who's like Charlie and
Yeah.
Colton and
Charlie,
Chase?
Colton, Chase.
What about
and
Mom?
Mom's got to fix the toilet.
Mom's got to fix the toilet. Yeah, Mom probably has to fix the toilet. What about Dad?
You got to keep working up here.
Yeah, I do got to do a little work.
Yeah.
But maybe I can sneak away to play in a little bit. So,
Okay.
what should we have for lunch?
Chicken.
Chicken.
I mean, like Chick-fil-A.
Oh, I don't want Chick-fil-A. That means we gotta go driving. If you can't go to school, you can't drive to Chick-fil-A.
Well, maybe.
Maybe
I
we
can
can.
drive.
Oh, you can drive. That sounds like a great idea. Put that microphone close to your face. All right, not too
Ow.
not too close. Okay, before we let you go. All right, ready?
Yeah.
Are you happy about the Super Bowl or are you sad about the Super Bowl?
Happy.
You're happy? Why?
My cousin and her dad.
Who's your dad? Who's her dad? What's his
Oh
name?
my.
Well, what's his name?
David.
Well, he's your Uncle Dave.
Okay.
What do you
He's
call Uncle Dave?
Do I have to say that?
No, you can't.
Okay, these nuts.
No, you can't say that. Okay.
You told me
Why?
to.
What about them? They like the Eagles?
Yeah.
They like the Eagles?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, who's going to win the Super Bowl next year?
Lions.
Yes.
Yeah.
All
Correct.
right. All right. So, okay. Well, that was a riveting segment with Carson Randazzo. I'm glad you took the time out of your busy day of playing video games to come talk with us.
Oh my.
Yeah.
I would be playing video games.
Anybody you want to say hi to out there? No? Okay. That's fine. That's
Hi.
fine. All right. Well, you stay there just for a second. We got to
Okay.
finish the show. We got a lot more to get to this week. If you've missed any of the shows this week, please go check them out. They've been a lot of fun so far. Yesterday we had Carter Bell on, which was a fantastic interview as well. We talked Iowa athletics and Iowa women's basketball with Kyle Huseman. And we also had, I'm trying to think what yesterday was. Yesterday was Johnny Marks. So check those out from yesterday. Monday's show was really, really fun. Pat Anger, Julian Vandervelde, and a whole bunch more on that show as well. So go check those two out. Stay safe in the Quad Cities. Stay warm and watch Off the Air for a little bit this afternoon. Get caught up on everything you need to know for the rest of the week. And we'll have a brand new show Off the Air coming up for you tomorrow right here when Carson is back in school and I don't have to deal with him. Ew. It was right.
Why
All right.
did you do that?
All
No.
right. Say goodbye, Carson.
Bye. Bye.